Accurate interpreting nearly cost my client millions of pounds. And if you're using AI interpreting or speech translation gadgets, it could be costing you too. Today, we're going to find out why you don't want accurate interpreting, what you want instead, and the benefits of getting it right. I'm Dr. Jonathan Downey, and this is Inside Interpreting. It was a fairly normal Scottish day. There were clouds in the sky. The weather forecast said rain possible, and the Scottish football team had recently had a disappointing result. I was working on an interpreting assignment that was a bit different to my usual fare. The British company who had called me in were trying to make one of the biggest sales of their history. All they had to do was get through this sales qualification meeting with a rep from the large French buyer, and they were all set. Seemed pretty straightforward too. But the jobs that seem straightforward never are. It's kind of a rule. Anyway, this straightforward job was straightforward for a while. Basic presentations, a factory tour, chit chat, checking the company was legally compliant. And then it happened. The French buyer starts getting annoyed that the British company won't give him a straight answer to one of his questions. The guys from the British company are getting frustrated that the French guy keeps asking the same questions. Suddenly, they've had enough and they walk out of the negotiating room and down the hallway. It wasn't until they pointed at charts for a while that I got it. They were using the same term but meaning the exact opposite. The British company were using quality to mean the percentage of items that had to be returned to the factory to be fixed. The French rep was using qualité to mean the percentage of products that arrived with no faults at all. So I explained to both sides what was going on, and a couple of hours later, an agreement was signed. If the British company were as good as they said, they had a multi-million-pound order arriving soon. The decision to stop being accurate and start interpreting what was actually meant saved the client's day. I'm not alone in making those kinds of decisions. To find out why I know that, we need to quickly revisit a previous video. I have a secret. I had to cut a lot from that recent video that I did on the revolution that happened in interpreting, including this cracker of a quote from Professor Graham Turner.
The most fundamental answer to the question that you're asking there, how do we measure quality in interpreting, as far as I'm concerned, simply has never attained a coherent answer in the history of the field to date. And I'm not sure where one could come from.
Weird, isn't it? Surely if interpreting is about getting information from one person to another, it should be easy to measure quality, shouldn't it? Just measure accuracy. The accuracy of the information that got from one person to another. Job's done. Right? Well, if you believe the hype around all those interpreting gadgets on the market, that is all there is. But is that hype hiding something fundamental? It seems that interpreting gadgets are everywhere. First, we had devices meant to help you chat up women. Then we had necklaces doctors could wear to interpret patients. Then we had interpreting glasses. And now we even have the possibility to live interpret phone calls. They all promise fast, accurate interpreting. But what if their entire premise is flawed? What if accurate interpreting isn't the big deal that they say it is? Yeah, that sounds weird. What else would you want from an interpreter? Accuracy is it, right? Actually, not so much. Here's the traditional but wrong way of seeing interpreting. First, someone has an idea. They then turn that idea into words. Then they say those words in their language. The interpreter hears or sees those words. The interpreter then carries those words over to the speaker of the other language. So if interpreting doesn't work like that, how does it work? Well, it's a bit trickier. Let me introduce you to Mr. Stick. Mr. Stick speaks English. He can spend his entire life buying crumpets, watching cricket, and complaining about the weather, and he will never need an interpreter until he meets Monsieur le Bâton. Monsieur le Bâton only speaks French. He can buy baguettes, learn about wine, and go on strike and never need an interpreter until he meets Mr. Stick. Here's something that most people miss. The problem that Mr. Stick and Monsieur le Bâton have is not that they have different words for things. Imagine that Mr. Stick is selling windows. In English, a window is a window. It could be a house window. It could be a shop window. It could be a car window or a ticket window in a train station. A window is a window is a window. But in French, that isn't the case. A house window is une fenêtre. A shop window is une vitrine. A car window is a vitre. And the window in the train station, well, that's a guichet. The French word for window tells you which kind of window it is. English has to add an adjective to that. In fact, depending on the context, you might not even use the word window at all in English. You might just say, I saw that dress in the shop, or it was on display, or I bought tickets at the station. Interpreters don't carry across meaning by interpreting a word at a time. That would be ridiculous. Meaning is something we make together as the interpreting happens. Languages don't have different words for things. They chop the world up in entirely different ways.
Look, I know I got caught up in the weeds there, but to get where we're going, it's necessary. There are two problems with accurate interpreting. The first is that accurate interpreting is rarely enough. An interpreter can give dictionary perfect definitions of what someone said, and it might still make no sense at all. Different cultures use different idioms and express emotion or intentions in different ways. For people to understand each other, interpreters have to make all sorts of subtle and sometimes not so subtle decisions. We saw that in my previous video. We'll talk about the work of Susan Birks-Ellickson, Cynthia Roy and Graham Turner. I could add this great book by Philip Angermeyer, or even this book edited by Ian Mason. They all said the same thing. Interpreting is a very active, involved and human process. Accuracy covers very little of that. You don't want accurate interpreting because it's almost never enough. But come to think of it, what is accuracy anyway? When you see all these claims of AI interpreting being 90% accurate, what it really means is that 9 times out of 10 they produce the same words that some human interpreters produced one time when they had to interpret similar words in a completely different circumstance. But honestly, those scores are pretty irrelevant. How I interpret something as simple as how are you will depend on who's saying it, where they're saying it, and the audience. How I deal with that joke you're planning to put into your next talk will depend on how much I know about you, how much I know about your audience, and whether it will make any sense to them. Interpreting is about people, and accuracy is never enough. You need something more. Interpreting that actually does the job isn't just accurate, it's appropriate. It's interpreting that is specifically tuned to who you are, who you're speaking to, and what you're trying to achieve. Interpreting like that is light years away from anything machines can deliver. To get interpreting that works for humans, you're going to need humans to interpret. The interpreting you need isn't just accurate, it's human. And it's human interpreting that can land you that next business deal, or assure you get a fair trial, or even get you access to medical treatment. If you're just passing pure information from one place to another, by all means use machines. But if the outcomes are important, if this meeting needs to be right, if the hearing needs to be fair, or if you really need the conference to go well, humans will always be the best option. When it matters, choose human interpreters. I'm Dr. Jonathan Downey, and this is Inside Interpreting. Now I just need to find my way out of here.